you're watching the silver screen. I got some tricks you wouldn't believe. Popmosis Film.
Hello and welcome to Popmosis Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Popmosis podcast. Well, at least this episode is, because we are doing something very special for me. We're talking about a movie that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Dawn of the Dead. And we'll get into why as we break down the movie. But this is also the first in a series of very special Halloween movies. So we're doing 4. Normally we do every other week. So we're working hard for you guys this month, getting 4 movies out, even though I'm not on one of those episodes. But
if you've been listening to our show and you heard our intro, you'd be like, wait a minute, this intro doesn't sound like the other episodes because it's spookified.
Yes, it's haunted, as are all the episodes for this month. And even if you're not listening it now, which is October of 2020, and hopefully you're longer as 2020 and listening to it in the future. But what you could be doing is listening to it wearing an awesome t-shirt.
Yeah.
And so what we are doing is we're doing an awesome t-shirt giveaway. Isn't that right, Paul?
Yeah, we're doing a giveaway.
So what you do is really simple. You just subscribe to my YouTube channel. Josiah is Write, W-R-I-T-E. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify or something else, head over to YouTube and subscribe, even though thank you for listening wherever you listen.
Yeah.
Head over to YouTube, subscribe to both. Be sure to comment on any Popmosis video on our YouTube for the Grand Geek Gathering, and any of my videos on Josiah is Right, and you will automatically be entered as long as your subscription thing is public, so that I can see, we can see that you're both subscribed. And what you will get, or be entered to get, and maybe we'll send 100 of these out, I doubt it, but we'll send out more than one, I guarantee you that. You will get either a Josiah is Right t-shirt, a Popmosis t-shirt, or a Grand Geek Gathering t-shirt. And we're working on some extra t-shirt designs for the future. So then there's we'll say at least 3 winners for sure, because right now we have 3 t-shirts.
We're thinking of designing a shirt for Juxtapazuki coinage. So let's work on that, guys. And we'll send it to you via t-shirt cannon.
Yeah.
So
yes,
keep
via
on the
t-shirt.
lookout.
Yeah.
Or
So
Amazon drone.
Or
Which I assume is a t-shirt cannon.
Josiah can ride around your neighborhood like Paperboy, the video game, throw it to you, throw it at dogs.
Oh, so this movie being a Pittsburgh movie kind of got me going. So I'll save all that nonsense and I'll get into the specs. So go ahead.
An idea: Paperboy versus zombies. There you go.
The sequel.
The kid is the patient 0, right? And then there's a zombie apocalypse, and he has to fight him off with newspapers.
Paul, that could be your fanfic, though. Speaking of fan fiction, no, okay, I don't know.
It's coming out, Arcade Blackfire. Blackfire, sorry.
You don't even know your own. Paul can't even complete his joke because he's getting his own Instagram.
Yeah, there's 50,000 followers for Arcade Blackfire. This whole time I've been pitching my own Instagram. It's love the podcast. I don't know what you're talking about. What's this Popmosis?
Leave me alone. I hate movies. Oh, man. Speaking of movies.
So speaking of movies, Dawn of the Dead. So Dawn of the Dead was released. There's 2 versions. The first version was released September 1st, 1978. And that is 119 minutes long. That is the Dario Argento cut. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And the Romero cut, George Romero, the director, April 19th, 1979, which was interesting to me because this movie we think of as a 1978 movie, but in the United States, it did not release until 1979.
What?
So, yeah, it's kind of flipped over. It's backwards from what you expect.
That's
but
weird.
it is a 1978 movie, but not even the version that we as Americans are most familiar with.
How did a indie movie from Pittsburgh be an international film first? That's the weirdest thing to me.
Well, there's this thing before the internet called word of mouth, right? And newspapers, and that's how things kind of became popular.
Those Europeans are weird.
But that is kind of true because so Night of the Living Dead actually became very, very popular in Europe after the fact, many years later. So throughout in the 70s, that movie was kind of had a legs after its initial release. It was released in, I think, 68, so that kind of was what sort of spurred it on. So continuing through
I'm pretty sure they considered a documentary in Romania. Just kidding. That was a terrible joke.
Oh.
So sad.
Written and directed by
Popmosis Film, where we burn Romania in every episode. I'm just kidding.
Whoa.
I'm just kidding. Romania is awesome, and I'm sure the people are as well. Hopefully.
Somebody out there's what the fuck, Tyler? Holy shit!
I know. We just lost the
Wait, why is some
whole
Italian
country.
guy mad? I don't
Oh, I'm
understand.
sorry. I have the Dario Gento
I
on the
know.
mind, so I guess that doesn't make sense.
So we'll get there. Yeah, we're
They'll be
almost there.
like,
So,
I don't want to suck your blood.
Oh,
Like that's what they're gonna
also-
say.
There's the extended cut with extra footage where it has the police on the dock, and one of the police officers is actually Joe Pilato, who is Captain Rhodes in Day of the Dead. You know, he's the main villain, and he goes, "Choke on them, choke on them," as the zombies are tearing them apart. So there's this fanfic that they believe that's the cat, him early on in the zombie apocalypse, and him in Day of the Dead is towards the end.
What?
So yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there you
probably
go.
not, but yeah, fans love that song. So, written and directed by George Romero. I met him, by the way.
Oh, Joe Pilato?
Yeah, he was at an event. I'll get to the event. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, written and directed by George Romero, produced by Richard Rubenstein, who, like Romero, came up in commercials. They actually worked together producing a series of sports films for the NFL in the mid '70s, kind of during the dark era. I know, during the dark era for Romero. There's a really great documentary done by the NFL Network called, I forget what it's called. It's about George Romero and the Pittsburgh Steelers at that time and how he would make these documentaries, because he's even though he's not from Pittsburgh, I always call him the most
Pittsburghian.
I'm forgetting what I call him. I call him the most Pittsburgh non-Pittsburgher ever. He's just that kind of guy. He's even when you hear him talk, he just has
Is that what you're called when you're from there? A Pittsburgher?
Pittsburgher.
I guess
right.
that makes sense. Yeah, burger.
So, but they work together on these. And the documentary on NFL Network is really good because it explores the phenomenon of Romero's zombies against the phenomenon of the Steelers in the 70s. So it kind of looks at sports through the lens of culture, which is always, to me, more interesting. Because I enjoy sports, but I prefer to look at it the way I look at films, through the lens of our greater culture and sort of what it says about us as opposed to team beating team. Even though, of course, I root for my teams, and I'm a Pittsburgh guy, so we know who I root for. Those of you who follow sports out there.
Yeah, go Chicago Bulls with those 3-pointer touchdowns.
And you know what?
And the birdies.
I'll say this. It shows that Tyler doesn't know sports because he picks the one professional sport that Pittsburgh doesn't have, basketball.
Do they really not?
There's no pro basketball team, no. So, but Rubenstein, he was Romero's producer through the 70s and 80s. He did a lot of Stephen King stuff in the 80s and the early 90s. He is producing the upcoming Dune movie because he produced not the 90s, but the late 90s, 2000s, very early 2000s, the Dune and the Dune. I think they did Dune and Children of Dune on miniseries on Sci-Fi. So he produced those. So he's attached himself to the new one, even though I doubt he's doing anything.
Probably not.
And then
I like
also
the
Dawn of the Dead remake. So, and I mentioned the screening that I had. So I used to run a film festival, and we had an event in Pittsburgh, which is a big highlight of me, at a theater called the Oaks Theater in Oakmont, Pennsylvania, which is up the Allegheny River, specifically from the city of Pittsburgh. And Tom Savini was there, who did the makeup. Michael Gornick was there, who did the cinematography. A few other people were there for Day of the Dead, because Mr. Rubenstein wouldn't let Dawn of the Dead be screened.
Why?
He holds the rights to it. I don't know. So I didn't book the screening. We just I booked my aspect of the film festival, which was short films. And so I don't know why, but he wouldn't let it happen. He's just very protective of the rights to that film for some reason. Don't know why.
Makes sense. I mean, as the film is on YouTube in full, but that's cool. But
Yeah.
He's doing a great job.
So it stars David MG as Steven, or more commonly known in the film as Flyboy, who we'll probably refer to him. Ken Foree as Peter, who I met at a different event. I met him in L.A.
Favorite character, just spoiler alert.
He's a cool guy in real life, because I met him and I was like, "Hi, I'm from Pittsburgh," and he's like, "Good for you," but super cool about it. And it was
He's like, right on.
And it was kind of gonna be like, "Okay, you gonna buy a picture or a poster?" And I'm like, "See ya." That was me. I'm like, $20 for a signed picture. But he's a really nice guy. I talked to him for a little bit, just about Dawn of the Dead, obviously, and being from Pittsburgh and stuff, and the mall, things that we'll bring up here. Scott Reiniger as Roger, and Galen Ross as Francine. Mm-hmm. And I was having trouble locking down what the budget was. I've seen numbers as low as 650,000 and as high as 1.5 million. But my guess is it did not exceed a million. I would be surprised if it went to 1.5 million. They made a lot happen with very little, and it was definitely a huge movie compared to Night of the Living Dead. But it was a small movie.
It was a little more colorful.
For sure.
What was the marketing budget?
Is that a real question?
Yeah.
It was just Europe, probably, so €1. I'm just kidding.
Well, no, I was gonna make a joke because, well, like they had to put a newspaper ad.
They didn't have
like call theater for details. Like they put an ad in the newspaper. Call theater for details.
Oh yeah.
And you call. Hey, what are they playing? We're playing Dawn of the Dead in one theater.
It was free because the theaters were just like, hey, we may play this if you come
so
in.
what was that at the time? Like $5.
Yeah, well, so what Paul's alluding to is the film was released unrated, and that's one of the things, kind of to Rubenstein's credit, like we kind of talked about how he wouldn't let me be involved in the screening of the film, which is not technically true, but indirectly true.
Yeah.
But what it was is he was basically a good producer because he would let Romero do what Romero needed to do creatively, and Romero is like known, or was known, rest in peace, as being super, or I guess he's a zombie guy, so he should not rest in peace, but as being a super. That's not an inappropriate joke for a George Romero zombie movie episode.
I think he would approve.
Too soon.
But he would let Romero do what he wanted to do. He was not like involved in creative decisions. That was Romero's thing, and he was the money man. He was kind of like, he's from New York as well as Romero, but he's more of the stereotypical New Yorker, that tough guy, kind of pushy guy, and he made things happen for Romero, and that was why it worked out. The relationship did through, and they worked together at least throughout the 80s. I don't know.
It's like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, or Matt Stone is the only one. Like Trey Parker is not allowed to talk to Comedy Central. Everything has to go through Matt Stone because he knows how to talk corporate.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what Paul was saying. So then, because of that, they were having trouble finding a distributor stateside. Dario Argento, with the agreement was Argento co-produced the film and was also a script consultant, which is insane to think about that. A guy who does not really speak English was a script consultant. So like Romero, Argento, and Romero's wife would be in Rome or whatever, having these meetings, and he wrote the film over there. So
that's crazy.
This gritty Pittsburgh zombie movie, it was written. I don't know if it was Rome. I believe it was though, but it was definitely not in Pittsburgh where he wrote it. And so he's writing it there with input from Argento, and I don't know if it's through a translator or what, but there was definitely a language barrier. But at the same time, he's a filmmaker, so he understood. So the difference is, the most significant difference is, we'll kind of talk about, but the Romero cut is longer, and then there's even a longer cut, as Paul mentioned, a director's cut. And then there is, in that Argento cut, it's different music as well. And Argento is actually also part of the band Goblin that did that music. So as we're not going to talk so much about that version as we're watching the Romero version.
Not to make it sound weird, but so it sounds like this movie was like really incestuously like made. It seems like with where everybody was like connected to one thing. Like Tom Savini was head of makeup and then also like a main character. And yeah, same thing with the musician and everything. It was.
But that's how you make a movie.
So weird.
If the movie was made for $650,000, though, that's how you do it.
That's true.
You know
Especially back then, and you're shooting in a mall.
Tom Savini's like, I'll do your makeup, and I'll do it for basically nothing. But I'm the head of the motorcycle gang. It's like, deal.
Well, I also love that Tom Savini he also did the stunts. So he was an actor. He did the stunts, and he did the makeup.
Wait, so he was like
crazy.
What? So he would be like David MG's like stunt double?
Yeah, there's a scene where the motorcycle guy goes through the window, and that was him actually going through the window. And then when they threw a grenade and somebody was pushed back, that was him.
Yeah, because he has his own stunts where where in his character there's like a fall and that, but for the most part he does other stunts as well. So because this is the kind of movie that, especially in that day and age, you don't have like a stunt coordinator.
Yeah, and this size with that small of a budget is crazy. Yeah, because they use a mall. Like that can't be cheap. I know they probably shot at night, but damn, still.
They did shoot at night. It's funny, a movie called Dawn of the Dead shot all at night. So yeah, they would literally shoot after hours when the mall was closed because the mall was working at that time. So since we're talking about the mall, talk a little bit about the mall. Romero knew the people who built the mall, and in the I think it was built in the late 60s, early 70s. I don't know exactly when, but I grew up there. I grew up going to this mall. As a kid, where we lived, we were kind of in between both. So you'd either go to Monroeville Mall or you'd go to Ross Park Mall. My friend was a little bit closer to Ross Park Mall, so we go there more often. And that's, to this day, that's like the good mall. In Southern California.
Oh, it's still open today?
Both malls are, yeah, in Pittsburgh. Those two.
Wow.
There's others that have died, but those two are still open. And Ross Park Mall is actually
malls.
like Ross Park Mall is like doing really well, but the Monroeville Mall is itself a zombie. So unfortunately, it's had you know, kind of some crime and things like that. When I was in college, actually, I went to Penn State, and for the first semester, then I transferred eventually to USC, and I would go to that mall, right, because there was a Greyhound bus station. And this is in the morning, like super early in the morning. And shuffling through that mall were all the old people walkers, right? There's like this old people just walking slowly through the mall, like shuffling. And I'm just like staring at them like I'm in the mall from Dawn of the Dead watching a zombie shuffle through. Like that's all that's in my head as I'm waiting for a Greyhound bus to take me to Penn State. So anyway, so let's actually talk about the movie. So let's start with, we're not going to necessarily go in sequence, but the opening sequence itself I really want to talk about because it's a really powerful opening. So this and World War Z are my two favorite openings for a zombie film, and I don't necessarily love all of World War Z, but I think the opening 20 minutes of that are amazing.
Yeah, okay, I'd give it that. It had character development where I didn't expect it. It was just weird.
For World War Z,
yeah.
I don't think it's a bad movie even after that, and it's still interesting, but I think that it's just super effective at the beginning because you're just caught up in it, which is why this also works because you're just caught up in it. So what do you guys think of the opening of Dawn?
Oh man, I got opinions.
Go ahead, Tyler.
No, you go. I'm gonna take a second.
No, I love the opening because it puts you right into the chaos. And you're in a newsroom, and they're all like freaking out, and they're like, "Hey, put up cut the feed for the shelter stations because they're actually shut down, and people are going to and it's not safe." And it's like, "No, keep it up because of the ratings," and then like there's actually a cameo with George Romero. He's he's like the director or whatever in the boardroom or like in the room, he's like directing everybody.
He just can't stop working. He's working as the film is going, and
working. Yeah, the thing is,
next to him, that's his wife as well. So that was his wife.
Oh, is it?
So he and his wife who worked together. She was like a producer. She worked on the film as well. So it's kind of fitting that they're kind of yelling at each other on screen.
But I love how it's chaotic because usually, in every movie, the news is like the reporters are the last people that keep doing their work. They'll report on the war or something, or there was reporting about the zombies. The zombies are overtaking a shelter or something like that. So it's you get the sense that, oh, okay, well, the reporters are the journalists are already freaking out, and so you have the very thin thread society already ripping apart, and then on the other hand you have the cops that are attacking that apartment building to find Martinez, and at the time, at least, the cops were sort of the other pillar of society. They uphold the law and order. So you have two parts that are upholding the law and order of society, and they're both unraveling. And so it really has a good way of throwing you into the chaos and really upping the stakes right off the bat.
Yeah, I watched this twice. The first time, I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know if the outbreak actually happened or not. I thought the guest was stating his theory on something, and everybody was getting mad at him for trying to create mass hysteria. I was just so confused my first watching. The second watching, I understood it so much more, but I still think it was a little too chaotic for me to follow 100%. Even though I know it's probably going to be realistic, or at least I would hope. But I don't know, it's so chaotic, and so much is going on, and so many people are saying stuff. It's weird how it was focusing on so many different parts of it as opposed to telling me what the story was. I felt like I know it was doing a lot of show me not tell me stuff to it, which is usually fine, but it was shot so chaotically that it kind of worked against it for me. It kind of turned me away from caring and maybe paying attention too much.
Well, I disagree because I think the chaos is really great because you have no idea who to follow until Flyboy goes to Fran and says, "We need to get the fuck out of here. Yeah. I have a helicopter. Let's go." Society's falling apart. And then okay, Those are our main characters. That's Fran.
Honestly, the first time I saw it,
Or
I
Steven.
I
Sorry.
thought he was just like, "Hey, let's go do our job." I thought the whole thing was like, "Let's go do our job, not escape." I was so confused at first.
Yeah, I understand what Tyler's saying with the chaos, but I lean towards Pogs. I think it's effective.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to like have the view of like seeing it for the first time because I can't tell you the first time I saw this movie. I've seen this movie so many times. As a kid, I didn't do well with horror. I didn't watch a lot of horror, but I was a kid. I was afraid. Like a friend of mine, Charlie Kramer, as a kid, I've lost touch with him. Maybe he's a Facebook friend. I don't even know.
I love horror. I would watch like Spice World, Josie and the Pussycats, North. Horror was my thing. That was a joke.
Those are some horrible movies. So anyway, Charlie had a birthday party, right? And all the kids, we were maybe in 3rd or 4th grade, I don't know. All the kids are downstairs watching like Chucky, Freddy movies, that kind of thing. The big 80s horror movies. Too scary for me. Even though those movies, watching them in retrospect, they're not scary really. But I'm upstairs with like Charlie's sister and like the 3 other kids that are playing like Guess Who because they're scared of those movies. That was me then. But the exception was zombie movies, and specifically Romero zombie movies, because I knew they were. I guess it's because I knew they were movies because they were filmed in places that I knew, in the mall and things like that. So I for some reason it made it more.
You're like, I know this
palatable.
didn't happen, so I don't have to be afraid.
Yeah, even though this is really probably scarier than any of those movies, yet I could watch it. I can't quite explain why, but sort of the beginning, the opening. It's really effective for me because of that chaos. But like I said, I can't have eyes of having not seen it a million times to understand every detail of what is happening. So it's hard to view that way. But what I love about it is compared to Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead is kind of like a slow burn, right? And it slowly builds up. They go slowly to the cemetery. The zombie comes slowly. And then it amps up and ramps up throughout the film as there's tons of zombies eventually. Whereas this one, it's just you start from where that movie ends. And I think that's important to remember. This is a sequel. It's not a sequel with the same characters, but it's a sequel of that world. This is that world that Romero created in Night of the Living Dead. And this is happening. This is, a night later, several days later.
It's just a carryover, yeah.
Yeah, and that really helps to understand the gravity of the situation because of how that movie ends when that house is just bombarded at points by the zombies. Kind of that's where this one right away starts off.
Yeah. I think the whole thing with me in this is like, and I told you guys this before, and I've told a lot of people before. I think I've even said it on several different shows. I don't like zombies. I don't like them. I don't like zombie movies. I've never really been entertained by them. I've never been scared by them. I've never particularly liked them, except for one, Shaun of the Dead, which is not only is it because Edgar Wright is a perfect filmmaker in my eyes, but it's the only one where I actually care about the characters. I care about what is happening in the world, and it gets to a point where it's not really about the zombies at all. It really is just about this jackass really trying to find love and be with his and try to figure out his status with his best friend. Am I going to keep him as a best friend, or am I going to drop him? Am I going to get my girlfriend back or not? And also the comedy is top notch as well. But I've seen so many.
That movie though is so unbelievably heavily referential to Romero.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like it's in a way it's like a romance. It's a love letter to Romero. And also the last part I have to say about this is, I believe Simon Pegg and
Nick Frost.
Were then zombies in. It might have been Edgar Wright.
Land of the Dead.
They were zombies in Land of the Dead. Yes.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is the
amazing.
first, by the way, which is still set in Pittsburgh, but it's the first Romero zombie film not filmed in Pittsburgh. He filmed it in Toronto. But it kind of comes full circle, and yet it doesn't.
Oh my God, that's awesome. But yeah, but with zombie movies, I've never, because I don't know. I don't like them. I don't like watching them. I've never really enjoyed them.
What is it? Is it there's like too much zombies? Like there's Walking Dead, there's World War Z. There's like zombie movies are all over the place nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, is it just like an oversaturation of like zombies? Like, is that what turns you off?
Because even when I was a kid and there weren't too many zombies, because like I read Walking Dead comic books and I saw the first 2 seasons of the Walking Dead show. I actually like Walking Dead because it's not really about the zombies at all. It's about these characters and it's about the humans. And because it gets to a point where sometimes you even forget about the zombies. Like there are, especially if you read the Walking Dead comics, there is like I think at one point 5 or 6 or even 7 issues where there is not one zombie in them at all. It's just a story about these humans living in a barbaric world, and sometimes you just forget about the zombies, and which is totally fine, and I like that aspect of it, but I still don't really care for it. I find zombies as just maybe like as a scapegoat, I guess sometimes, and a lot of the movies especially are just not done well, either the script wise or the world continuity. I just feel like most zombie movies are made cheap, and there's just a lot of it they don't want to explain. I feel like a lot of them lack good writing. They're just like, oh, the zombies are like this because of, let's just throw the dart at the pin board, or throw a dart at the cork board. Oh, they're zombies because of a virus. There's that. Or oh, let's throw another dart, and then it's a lab experiment gone wrong. And it's just I don't.
I mean, that's the thing. The powerful thing about zombies is that they're basically the dead version of, like, it could be your best friend or like your sister or your dad, and it's just like these people rising up and turning up against you, and it's like this horde mentality that you're alone against like the zombies being like overwhelming you. And I can kind of see where you're coming from. It's like there's so many things that are zombies. Like zombies are all over the place. But
I mean, also against that, I've never seen a movie really, really go with that, minus Shaun of the Dead at the end, where Ed becomes a zombie and then he's chained up. Like I feel like that had
then
more.
You haven't seen Day of the Dead, which is
I haven't.
Literally Day of the Dead. Like the movie we screened instead of Dawn of the Dead, I think is the end all be all of zombie movies because it asks some of those questions. I remember the first time I saw that because I saw it much later. And I thought, how can you make a zombie movie after this? Because it's literally like the premise is essentially like this is the last bunker at the end of the world where they're trying to figure out the zombie thing. And they're learning to communicate with one of the zombies. That's one of the things. And like learning to like, does it still have humanity? So like when I saw
or even a thought process,
Shaun of the Dead, when I saw Shaun of the Dead, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's his name's Bud the zombie from Day of the Dead. Like that was exactly what I thought of. So it's like, again, Romero did it first, man. If it's zombies, Romero did it.
All the zombie tropes,
maybe not the romantic comedy side, but
all the zombie tropes like can be traced back to Dawn of the Dead. It like set up everything, like the enemies, or like humans or people fighting over each other, and they're actually the villains, where zombies are the backdrop. The social commentary of like consumerism, all of that is traced back to Dawn of the Dead. It's like, it's groundbreaking, basically. It's like this small little film that like changed the cinema in many ways.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I never seen, Day of the Dead. Like, I think the ones I'm just mostly, I mean, I saw Night of the Living Dead. I mean, I've seen so many horror, like, or zombie movies, like World War Z. Like, World War Z had that, like, I agree with Josiah. The beginning of it is fine. I think it's great. I really do. I think that it's some good character development, but then it gets so fast paced and so lost in its story to a point where I don't even care anymore, because it's like everything is like, because the zombies are like going like 90 miles an hour and then the story is as well. So I'm just like, I can't relate. I can't process, and I don't care. But yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that's the big difference between Dawn of the Dead and World War Z is like, I saw Dawn of the Dead a long time ago. I ran into Blockbuster Video. That's the first time I saw it, and it's I think I was like maybe 14 or 15, and it really stuck with me. And like, it's one of those movies that are very memorable. Like there's so many different scenes that I just like remember, and even to this day I still love Dawn of the Dead so much. And I saw World War Z back in the theater, and then I also saw it on Blu-ray, and I can't remember what happened in the beginning. Like, I just, all of it is just like, forgot it.
Oh, it's like the family stuff.
What was it? Oh, yeah.
But it's like him getting his family out amongst the chaos. So,
oh, okay. Yeah. And that's fine, I guess. It's funny how, like, when you compare those two movies, Dawn of the Dead I feel is far more memorable than World War Z. And in fact, like World War Z, that's very.
I will say that Dawn of the Dead left an impression on me, and like, I guess like what I'm getting to is that I did like this movie. a lot more than any other ones I ever watched. I felt like this movie did have heart to it, but I also think it's Ken Foree's performance.
Forey.
Foree. I don't know. It's Foree.
It's a foray into
Like
Ken
Kane
Foray.
Foree.
Kane Hodder.
But Peter.
Foray the door. Foray the door.
Peter was awesome. I mean, I have some.
So let's segue into this, because one of the questions I had for you guys is, this is once they escape, they get in the helicopter with Flyboy and Franny are a couple, and the two police officers, Roger and Peter, after this powerful sequence in a basement where the African American cop is killing other people of color that are zombies and like crying as he does it. That's the moment where he's the star of this movie, really, for me at least. And they're all good, I think.
That was a great way to really introduce the character, especially back then.
Ton. Yeah, and he doesn't say a ton, which is really makes it, you have to be more, speak more within the few things you do say and through your actions, and he does it beautifully. So then that crew takes off. It's all filmed in Pittsburgh. Within the plot, they fly from Philadelphia. It's set at Philly at the beginning, and then they fly to Monroeville, I guess, which is the Monroeville Mall, which is just outside of Pittsburgh. And then they hunker down in the mall. And that's where the story really mostly takes place. And once they get there, there's some zombie action things, but it really slows down, and it's about these four characters. So let's talk about the character dynamics in that section of the movie.
So you have the four main characters. You have Roger, Peter, Steven, and Francine. I like Francine a lot in it. I think I actually really, really like her character. Peter was great. My only issue with Peter is that he turned into like Terminator at the end, where he was just like unstoppable and just really, really lucky. Like, I feel like he was going, like, I don't know, like he just became Superman out of nowhere, and like nothing could affect him. He was like 4 times faster than all the zombies, where like before he wasn't, and it was weird. But like I love the character though, and I like how. I don't know how he just reacts to everything. I feel like he's the only character that's processing, and I feel like he grows with Francine as well. I like Francine because she does grow too, like especially like the makeup scene, and there's just certain little things about those two characters that really stick to me, and that I really enjoyed.
And I think also that that Flyboy Steven also grows, because he's really the sort of the hotshot one. And like early in the film, he's trying to take shots, and he almost kills Peter when Peter's in with that scary sequence where the kids come out of him and the zombies, and they come out, and he has to throw them down and just blow them away. And again, like these things that would be really hard, because even
though the motel scene, right?
The refueling station. Yeah, so he's like, it might have been a motel like next to the helicopter landing pad, but he's like in the office type of thing. So it's in the office next to the refueling station, and that sequence is another one where it's like he breaks him down, but that's where you see Flyboy as like, I'm going to take this shot, even though he has 2 skilled guys who are basically sharpshooters, and he's just like a dude that can shoot a gun, and he wants to be a badass. And,
but he works for the
like
news, though. I'm kidding. Sorry.
But you said Peter, like he's like kind of the Terminator, and he kind of, in a sense, I think that's intentional. That's his, and it's a little bit of his character. He's the effective one. He's always steady. He's always cool. And Roger is kind of like the wild one, and it gets them in danger later. But Roger is wild but effective. And then Flyboy Steven is like, I want to be those guys, but I'm not. And he keeps trying and failing. But then later on through the film, like as things slow down, like he and Peter develop a real friendship and a relationship, and then he kind of changes and he realizes, okay, it's almost like he finally accepts some of what his limitations are.
I feel like Scott or Roger's character is like the epitome of any Bill Paxton character in a not a Michael Bay, in a
James Cameron
movie.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay.
I know.
Man.
They're brothers, I think, right? No, I'm just kidding. No, but like in Aliens and True Lies.
Maybe he's his illegitimate son or something.
Redheaded stepchild.
Keyword being illegitimate.
It's funny too, because I've seen so many characters, not even just Bill Paxton and James Cameron movies, but just in general, of characters that are like Roger. And I can't think, and I've seen a lot of classic movies, and there's not a lot of characters like that. So I feel like Roger is kind of the start of a trope, which is actually kind of cool too. He's a trope setter. which is interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the first one that is like a main character that gets bitten by zombies and then becomes one, and like they're emotionally attached to everybody else, and so like his death really affects them, and like when he's like screaming out in pain, it's like you see how it wears down on the rest of them because that's one of their own, and so he's essentially he's like one of the first like victims like that. Like again, like I said, Dawn of the Dead really sets up a lot of these tropes that that show up in all these other zombie movies later on. Go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I was saying, like, it's funny because, like, I would think that Steven would, like, hate him because I hated Roger's character. Like, if I knew him, or if I was stuck with him, I'd be like, you know what, I think I might just want to get eaten by a zombie instead of dealing with you. Because he was so obnoxious and so, like, doing stupid shit all the time. It was driving me crazy. Like, I you know, not saying that he was bad. Like, it was effective.
Yeah, like, and I think that's, like, he's kind of that wild man type of character. Go ahead, Paul.
But I think the interesting thing about that is that Roger and Peter are basically like the same in the beginning of the movie, and then Peter, like Roger's the first one to kind of crack, even though you think that Flyboy is going to be the first one to crack because he's like the weaker of the three of them.
He's like
but actually,
like the straight man.
Yeah, actually, Flyboy becomes a stronger person because of his relationship with Peter,
because he exactly.
And so it's interesting that dynamic, how it affects people different ways. And so you think, well, if Roger can be affected, then maybe it can affect Peter too, even though Peter's like the strong, lead for most of the movie.
They do kind of tease it with Roger, though, that he kind of would be the one that would kind of crack. Very early on when they're conducting that raid, he's next to like an even younger rookie cop, and he's like chewing his gum, and he's like, it's going to be cool. And then right away, that kid gets shot in the head. And he's like, oh, it's like he really thought, like, we are bulletproof. Until he saw that kid get shot, and that's early in the movie. And so I love that it's like that moment where it kind of sets up what will then happen to him. And so let's talk about the sequence. So what happens is, we're talking about Roger, he gets bit and he eventually turns, right? So what they're doing is they're moving these big semi-trucks to block the entrances to the mall so they can secure it, so they can prevent any more zombies or others from getting in, and then sort of handle the zombies that are inside so they can limit the number. And, of course, it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Want to talk about that?
Well, I just wanted to punch Roger, but I knew he would definitely kill me. Like, if I was in that situation, like, there's no way I would have survived me hitting Roger, because that guy is heavily trained. But, like, damn. We're talking about the beginning, like, with the trucks and everything, right? Where he actually initially gets bit twice. He gets bit on the arm and then the leg as he's trying to get in.
So I think, he's trying to crawl. Basically what it is they're moving the trucks around, and Peter's in one, and they go back and they get a truck.
I had no idea what they were doing until you guys explained it to me. I just thought they just wanted trucks. I didn't understand that they were blockading. To me, it wasn't clear.
And that's another thing about this movie is like their plan is pretty smart, actually, to block all the entrances so that the zombies they don't have the leverage to actually break the glass and get in. Right up until then, they seem pretty safe, and they're just like like clearing the mall full of zombies, and they're barricading the entrances. And so this kind of needed to happen to show that, hey, they're not exactly safe, that the world of the zombie apocalypse can seep in and really affect them. And I love this sequence because it has like some great lines from Roger, like perfect baby, perfect, and we got this by the ass, man. Like, it's just like so great, Roger's character. And but you see him be like kind of cocky, and then by him being cocky, it like he leaves himself vulnerable to get bitten. So it's just like a really great sequence.
But where did they come from? That's like everything's so confusing to me. Like, I know that there's some already trapped in, but there was nobody around. Or maybe I'm just remembering.
Well, they're just constantly wandering towards it. And they even mentioned that. They're like, why do they keep coming here? And they said maybe it's something inside them, a memory of a place they used to go. So they just like instinctively are going to this building. Yeah. They mention that when they like first land on the roof. They don't quite know why. And they don't ever give you a definitive answer, but it's kind of like, well, something innately in them is bringing them here. What is it that brings them there? So let's talk about this portion of the movie, which is really where Romero has what is, I believe, his message for the film about our consumer culture. And you have these characters. So after Roger gets bit, they're basically they have cart him around in a wheelbarrow, and they're moving him around, and it's before he turns into a zombie. They're having this kind of ideal life, and they have everything they could possibly want because they have access to J.C. Penney and all these other stores. Walden Books was in there. I used to shop at that Walden Books. The J.C. Penney is still there. The Walden Books is long gone. Yeah. The J.C. Penney is now in the movie. It's 2 stories. Now it's only 1, so it's like a sporting goods store on the bottom floor.
Wow, thanks a lot, Dawn of the Dead, ruining J.C. Penney's for everybody.
I think J.C. Penney's did that to
itself. It didn't even have the J.C. yet. It was just Penney's.
No, it was still J.C. Penney's. It was.
No, I mean, but during the movie.
Yeah, that was just the Penney's thing.
J.C. came later.
The zombies took the J.C.
But it's funny because it's still Penney's. That's how my mom refers to it, and that's how, like, even when like Pittsburgh people, I don't know if it's because of this, we would refer to it as Pennies.
See, I refer to it as the store I don't shop at.
Oh wow.
You're throwing shade at my mom? Come on, man.
What? That's not really a shade at her.
My mom, that's where she gets all my clothes when she sends clothes out here for my kids. Anyway, not that specific one though.
I go to Macy's, so I'm not any better.
Because it's not even a regular JC. You know what was even worse though? It's like now like a JC Penney outlet, or no, maybe it's the Macy's that's an outlet. So it's not, the mall is not on great times. But let's talk about the sequence in the movie. They basically have it locked down. They have everything they could need. There's a gun store there. There's everything there. So they have ammunition. They have food.
Yeah, wait. Were there gun stores in malls? Like, okay, so we also glazed over a big thing about this movie, about the mall itself. Like, at this point in time, malls were a brand new concept. This was a very, very new thing that honestly a lot of people in America didn't really know about. The malls were just it's such a big.
And when this was built, like I said, I believe in the late 60s, this was the biggest one at the time, Monroeville Mall. And so, like we talked about briefly at the beginning, but Romero toured the mall because he knew the people that had just built it, through his Pittsburgh connections, because he did, commercials. So I'm sure through, like, doing the commercial accounts that he did. But he said he would go in the back sort of areas, and he realized there's all these fortifications for civil defense. So all these stockpiles, supplies, all these things that if there were an emergency, this would be a place that people could gather. That was part of the idea.
Yeah, like natural emergencies, like hurricanes and stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. Or in Pittsburgh, like it's very hilly, so it's not like a huge problem, but we do have tornado weather, so you could theoretically have the tornadoes. As a kid, we'd always have tornado watches. It was never like the Midwest because it's not flat, but we'd always have tornado watches.
Do you think they actually had like medical supplies, like the stuff they were making Roger take as, to slow down the zombie process? Also, what the hell did they give him? Did they even say in the movies? I don't remember.
No, my guess is just that my assumption would be if you're just treating and cleaning the wound, maybe that's the idea that it's like an infection, right? So if you have a cut that's infected, if you clean the cut, it's still a cut and it still hurts, and it'll heal faster, right? So by that logic, if you're cleaning the cut, like I'm pointing to my head as I told Tyler I cut my head yesterday, and so if you're cleaning that cut, right, it heals faster than if you don't. So I think it's just that logic. Maybe they're not putting anything special, but just the fact that they're treating the wound, it's enough to slow it down a little bit. So, but that's the thing. So all this going on, and they're just basically becoming consumers, and they're living this sort of ideal life in the mall. They're secure, they're safe. But while this is happening, what we've already talked about, Roger is slowly turning. He is inevitably going to become one of the dead. He's going to be a zombie in no time.
I think that may be one of the things I disagree with this movie is I think maybe maybe this is what we were talking about earlier, where I would have liked it. I think he turned to a zombie too slowly. I think if he had turned quicker and everybody like kind of was stuck with him. No, you really like that slow?
No, I disagree.
Because it made no sense. Like other people, like Flyboy turned to a zombie like that. Like.
But it needs to be a slow
not even 5
burn,
minutes later.
Because the slower it is, the more it affects everybody else, because they're just waiting for the inevitable. And it's interesting how you see him, his skin becomes dehydrated. You know what I mean? Like you see the physical effects on him, and you hear him, screaming out in pain as he's dying. And so it's like one of their own is dying that you already have an emotional attachment with, and so you need that slow burn to really make it effective.
And I think that's the difference between, real quick, sorry to interrupt, Paul, is the Romero cut and the Argento cut, because this is the portion that Argento's cut is like 10 minutes shorter, and this is kind of where the stuff gets cut out. So maybe that's if you were to watch that, I haven't seen it in a while, but I know that this portion is where a lot of the stuff comes out of it, that it kind of gets to those things a little bit quicker. I'm with Paul, though, because this is my favorite part of the Romero film, where you get to spend time with these characters and you see them becoming essentially like zombies themselves, right? And go back, Paul. You have any more? Sorry to interrupt you again.
I actually want to ask about that. So, are you talking about, because I know you keep on saying commercialism, like, so are you talking about as consumers becoming the zombies, like when they're going through with the access to all of the clothes and all the pretty things? Is that what you mean?
The zombie is the ultimate consumer. It is out there just to consume. Literally, it's aimlessly looking to eat and devour something. So that's why zombies, even if they're worse, they're still a social commentary for consumerism. What is the zombie out there? Even the bad zombie movies, they just by fact that they picked zombie, they have a little bit of something to say because Romero already said it well. So, and I mean, how can you not, like, you have these people in a mall, in these meccas for shopping, and now especially, like, it's kind of flipped on its head because malls now, they're all over the country, and a lot of them are themselves rotten zombie corpses. I cannot even imagine. I'm not even factoring in COVID into that, with how that might have devastated these places even more that we weren't going to anymore. They're just out there. So
also, yeah, and
that's another thing.
And pictures of abandoned malls are like the most horrifying thing ever.
And that's another thing. It's like, a lot of times, like, when marketing kind of drives people's tastes and the perceptions, and in a way, marketing creates zombies in a way. They create the trends that people just follow. So there's that subtext to it, the whole zombie thing, that people are just driven by marketing and advertisements and commercialism. So it's like, it works on that way. And the thing that I love about this movie is, like, this is so subtle. It's not in your face.
No, not at all.
Be clever. It's completely subtle and, very intelligent. Like, it doesn't, hit you over the head with these themes.
Let's talk about, real quick, do you have a little bit more, Paul?
No, I mean, that's about it.
But my next question sort of leads us into the thing that absolutely hits you over the head, is the gore in the blue zombies. So there's no subtlety in this whatsoever part of the movie. What do you guys think of the almost cartoonish level of gore and the blue zombies?
Okay, I have a lot of opinions on this one. Paul, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I like the blue makeup. I like it because it looks odd, and also because it's quasi-realistic. I don't want to go too much into it, but there is a faction of people in a state in the United States called Kentucky, where it's disgusting, and don't look it up if you don't know what it is, but there are blue people, and it kind of like reminds me of that and disgusts me the exact same way, and it makes me repulsed and feel off, and not because of similar things, but it's just the color of it. So to me, it actually works, and so I like the blue paint. I think I like the fade, like the faded, just this discolor, this weird discolorment of it. But I hate the gore. I hate the blood. The blood looks way too fake. It's way too bright, and it really puts me out of the entire movie. And I'm trying to think of it as well as being in the audience watching the film live, like back then, where everybody was scared of, of a train coming, maybe not at the beginning where everybody was afraid of that, that clip of a train coming out and everybody like ran out of the theater scared. But like, I but like, horror movies weren't really like too big, they weren't a plethora. They not on, October of every year where there's like nowadays where we have like 30 new films, horror films that are coming out throughout the entire month. Back then, they were a lot more scarce, and so I'm trying to think.
And even just to hop on real quick, with even Romero's goal with the original Night was all the other horror movies. This is 10 years before Dawn. When you would see the gore, they would cut away. Romero's thing was, I'm not going to cut away. So that was consistent with his zombie films, not cutting away. So you're going to see it.
And I think that's the whole thing. Is like that blood is just way too bright, and it really just takes me out of it, and I really wish they used just better blood, because this is the same year as Alien, that had awesome blood, like great. And I also know that they had different. I mean, they had a different budget, but still, blood is. I can't imagine blood being that expensive back then, just like it isn't now.
In Pittsburgh, blood's hard to get. I guess I don't know. I'm from there, but I've never tried to purchase large quantities of blood like you probably need in this movie.
That should be the city slogan: Pittsburgh, where blood is rare.
So speaking of the blood, Romero loved it. Romero loved the cartoonish look of it. Tom Savini, who did the effects, did not. So the blue zombies weren't intentional. It's just how things photographed on the film. They were supposed to look pasty white, but just because of whatever makeup Tom Savini used, they then appeared blue when filmed. And this isn't, in the day and age where you could go back and post and fix something. Of course, with the number of zombies they have in this movie, it would be quite insane to do that. So
I think it was so much easier to differentiate them. That's why I liked it, maybe too. So
I mean, the thing because this is an independent movie. I love this movie because of its charms, and like the bright red like comic book blood is one of its unique charms, and then like the blue.
Do comic books have
gray
blood at this point?
Makeup. What's up?
I don't think comic books had blood at this point. I don't think they were allowed.
It's like a very saturated red, so it's like very comic booky, almost like a very like.
Yeah. Even if you're not, it's not. Yeah, even if it's not a bloody comic book, it's the
kind of
the brightness, the brightness of the colors is
bam,
bam,
zap.
Yeah, like
and the whimsy, and I love it. It's like the thing I love about this movie is it's very like rough, anarchic spirit. Like it's like it feels like an independent movie. It feels like it was made by people, like it's made with love.
Made by people. I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
just kidding.
And the thing is, like it's like a lot of movies nowadays are like so polished, and and I love how they kind of just were being resourceful, using what they had to make this movie, and so it's like it has this great rebellious spirit, and so I appreciate the blue face makeup or the gray face makeup and the really bright red blood. And one thing that I really
You're winning me over there. I'm not going to lie. You're winning me over on that.
Oh, am I? Okay. And one thing I also like is that because of the face makeup, when they have the establishing shots, you really can see the zombies. Like you can see them in the landscape. And so it's kind of haunting to see like these regular looking faces up close, but from afar, they look very ghoulish, landscape. And so I think it's just really effective and your
use of ghoulish I like, because Romero, he never called them zombies originally. The zombies came later from other people. He called them flesh-eating ghouls, at least for when he was writing the first one, because it was originally Night of the Flesh Eaters, and they changed it to Night of the Living Dead. So but he would call them flesh-eating ghouls. That was his word. The original Night of the Living Dead was very inspired by Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. So those kind of like, they weren't necessarily zombies in that book. They were quasi sort of vampire type creatures, but they were basically just a creature that consumed other creatures, essentially.
I'm looking up the origin. That's crazy. Well, the first recording of the word zombie is in 1819 from Brazil by poet Robert Southey. That does not sound like a Brazilian name. Interesting. So flesh-eating ghouls sounds like something like from like the Scooby-Doo gang would say, ooh, flesh-eating ghouls. Like
yeah.
And then like George Romero, like this heavy.
Is that a zombie there, Scoob?
And then zombie Scooby is like rips Shaggy's throat out. Anyway. If my dog were a zombie, that's what he would do. So let us talk about, so as we segue kind of towards the conclusion of the film, and we'll just round our way around, make our way around here to the actual conclusion of the film, because it kind of ends very similar to how it begins, in complete and utter chaos. So what happens at the end of the film is the biker gang then comes in, breaks through, pulls down the barricades. And it's interesting because you have the group inside. Roger is now turned and done. So it's Flyboy. It's Steven Flyboy. Steven is Flyboy. So it's Steven, Peter, and Franny. And Franny, by the way, who I haven't mentioned, is pregnant throughout this. and she's more pregnant. So she's pregnant the entire movie, and it's kind of like one of those things that kind of can become lost in it. But she is pregnant in this film. So
When do they indicate that? I don't remember that at all.
there's a scene earlier on where like they do something or they make a decision or they when they go through the J.C. Penney, I think for the first time and kind of barricade them, and it almost goes badly because of something that happens with Roger. And so then after that, they're in like the storeroom, and she's kind of angry, and she's like, even though just because I'm pregnant, I want it to be part of the decisions. And I think that might even be where she's also like, I want to learn to shoot, and I want to learn to fly the helicopter. All these things, kind of, which are going to be important for this sequence, because it's like she's becomes aware, like even though she's physically kind of the weak one because she is pregnant and a woman who's not a trained army person. Go ahead.
And
Paul.
also, the thing about Fran is, like, I love her character arc, how she starts off as, like, this submissive woman that's just along for the ride, and then she learns how to fly the helicopter, she becomes more assertive, she learns how to shoot, and so she becomes more a part of the team, and she becomes more an assertive woman, and, like, has that sense of empowerment. And so I love her arc because I love that arc so much.
Yeah, like at first she's a producer in charge, and then like what Paul's saying, I like the fact that where she's just kind of like an equal.
Yeah, yeah, and essentially it's just a great arc that she has, and it's funny that because like they actually have a conversation about are you going to keep the baby or not, like they have this conversation. It's up on the in their apartment. They have that conversation. It was like early on that they mentioned it, and then later on they have like this montage, like they kind of flash forward after Roger dies, and it shows her like she's arching her back and rubbing her belly, and she's like really pregnant. She's like a couple months pregnant, and I specifically love this montage. It shows her putting her makeup on, and then it shows like the apartment. The apartment's all furnished and looks like actually like a home. And then it goes all the way up to the roof, and you see Ken Foree playing tennis on the wall, and you see them kind of like living their life outside of the zombie apocalypse, like they're kind of making do with these horrible circumstances. But so Peter's playing tennis on the wall, and he drops one of the balls, and it rolls off the roof and goes to the bottom floor and bounces. But you see like a ton of zombies all over the place, even more zombies than when in the beginning of the film. And I just love that edit. I think it's a very cool edit and very creative how you like follow the tennis ball and slowly like their safety and security is just like a thin facade, and it just like those are the zombies. This is ever omnipresent, like this is a threat that's always at their doors, no matter how safe or secure they pretend to be. Another thing
Can I say one thing on that note?
Yeah.
I just, for me, it was like it was the funniest thing in the world, and it really bothered me. But also, I thought of it was more. I just thought it was hilarious and like the weirdest thing. But like when he's playing tennis, he is hitting that ball with like all the force in the world, and then then they would cut to the wall, and the ball would just ever so lightly just hit the wall and just lightly bounce off. Like it was just like the weirdest thing that like I think I went back and I think I rewatched it, like I rewound it so many times before because he'd be like, "Gah!" and it'd be like, boop.
I think it's funny that you noticed that and not that a woman was pregnant, even though
I know.
it was like through the whole movie. Like what? Like,
I know it's weird. My mind works in strange ways.
We have different rules of physics in Pittsburgh, though. So
Yeah.
just FYI.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, tennis balls bounce differently there. So
I think that's why the Williams sisters refuse to play.
yeah, they won't play the Pittsburgh Open.
We'll go anywhere but Pittsburgh.
so yeah, I mean, I love I love that how like the zombie apocalypse is like crushing them, like no matter what. And in fact, they have this small happy moment where Fran and Flyboy they have a dinner together, and Roger's there and he's like their waiter, and they have like a nice moment. They have a nice steak dinner, and Roger goes out and he sees Oh, I'm sorry. Peter goes out and he sees Roger's grave, and he has like some wine, and he remembers his friend. And then they cut to this scene where it's Fran and Flyboy, and they're in the bed, after they've, had sex.
What?
And they were like,
Oh my
looking
God,
out in the
Paul.
distance. Yeah, both of them are like looking out in the distance, like all, like it's like this happy moment was tainted by like the overwhelming pressure of everything that's going on outside. So it's like all these scenes are like very effective in just establishing like, hey, maybe they're safe and secure, but it's really by a thin line.
Yeah, it's like that glass where she was staring at that kid zombie, and like just that little bit is what's holding them kind of safe. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's basically not much difference between them and the zombies. Like,
I also love that scene of because I love Francine's character. I think she's awesome. But I love that scene where she's just sitting there and just staring at this zombie kid and the zombie or like zombie teenager or whatever, and like they're just locked eyes, and like it was like that part of like of the little bit of a glimpse of humanity that's still left within them, but they're gone still, and it's just crazy. Like it's like what you were saying. It's just
and that's always like
line.
the scary thing about zombies is like that loss of humanity. That you see your friend there, and they're not. They look like your friend, but they're completely gone, and just that. And the compelling thing about Day of the Dead is with Bub, you kind of see a little part of his humanity coming back, and so you wonder where is the line between humanity and a zombie? Like where do you actually fit?
Or how does a zombie not become a human again? I guess too.
Yeah, there's that thin line, and so like you also what I really like about Day of the Dead is Romero's like, oh fuck it, let the zombies have it. Humans are horrible, and they destroy each other and they kill each other. The zombies just feed into their impulses, and so the zombies are more pure than people in a way because they don't kill each other. They just feed, and that's it. They're simple,
and they don't know. There's like there's no process of it.
Yeah, I love that whole narrative thread through all three movies where, Dawn of the Dead, you have humanity, society falling apart and kind of trying to survive on their own, even like killing each other. And then Day of the Dead is like, we've lost, and this is how we've dealt with it.
Is there a reason why they didn't call this Dawn of the Living Dead and then Day of the Living Dead?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Because it seems like this is a really hard trilogy. Like,
well, so one thing too is Romero actually said when he worked on the first one, he had more ideas that would inevitably. It's very George Lucasy. George Romero pulled a George Lucas where he's like, oh, I have two more that I'll do. Set these aside for later. And those were the other films, at least in some form, or for ideas for a story. I don't know how sort of knocked down it was. But like I said, the original title that Romero had was Night of the Flesh Eaters. That was the original title. The distributor asked them to change it to Night of the Living Dead. So maybe part of it is they just weren't, Romero and his side wasn't necessarily always crazy about that. And Dawn of the Dead, a little bit more simple, a little bit more clean, a little bit more effective. So, and I think at that point that's my guess as to why. But also one of the issues with the title Living Dead, right? Night of the Living Dead. So when they changed that title, they lost the rights to that movie because copyright law at the time said the copyright had to be on the film that it was released at. So that's why anyone can release a copy. We could hold a screening and make money on Night of the Living Dead.
Holy crap!
Romero and other bunch of guys from Pittsburgh that he made that original one with do not make money on that film because anybody can because it fell into the public domain. So Night of the Living Dead fell into the public domain. So I don't know if that might also be a factor in why the name is different. Not sure.
Well, but what's the other movie where they put it in the wrong date in Roman numerals?
I'm not sure about that one. Was it the same thing? So it basically destroys your copyright.
I thought we talked about that in every
podcast. Was it a tennis movie?
The John McEnroe story, which talk about. We're talking about that next episode. So back to the film at hand. So like kind of what Paul talks about is you have the crushing inevitability of this apocalypse. And one really interesting thing about Romero's films is the zombies are dangerous and they will hurt you, but like Paul said, they just consume mindlessly. There's no intention behind it. It's not evil necessarily. Then the biker gang, this marauding army shows up. They're going to take that mall. That's going to become theirs. And meanwhile,
That's my least favorite. Like honestly, I hated it. I hated the whole thing.
but I think that you're supposed to kind of hate it. I think we've talked in the past about this film, but I think what happens is, at least Romero's message is, we are what's going to destroy us. What it is we will always do anything we can to hold on to what's ours, and we will create someone as the other. That biker gang is the other. Whoever is the other, we create this otherness, and we very much do it in society, and it creates a sense of fear, and fear can, I mean, I'm Yoda here, fear leads to aggression. I know that's not the Yoda quote, but I wasn't trying to quote Yoda, but that's what's happening, and the film shows you that very powerfully. Like, this ending, it's kind of interesting compared to the first ending, because the Night of the Living Dead is absolutely the most, like, at least in my life, the most shocking ending to a film I had ever seen, at least as a kid, where all through that movie, Ben, like, keeps it together, basically tries to keep other people alive. He's the level-headed one. He's kind of like the Peter of this movie, not just because they're both black, but because they're both the steady character. And then at the end, he hunkers down in the basement, and he survives the night. He comes out to get killed by some random, like, redneck guy. Like, absolutely, like, just super, like, you know, kick in the balls of an ending, like, more than any ending that I, at least, like I said, as a kid had seen. So this film, you kind of have it's a little bit different, where the biker gang shows up and essentially brings the zombies with them, right? So it's kind of like even more chaotic, whereas in the previous movie, the zombie stuff all happens the night before, things quiet down, and then rednecks show up. But in here, it's like the chaos is in, everything collides at once.
So, the interesting thing about, like, Night of the Living Dead is that, you know, they kind of comment on it's very, you know, it said kind of during the civil rights movement. So it really resonates so much because of that. And then this movie resonates because right around 1978 is like kind of like the female empowerment, you know, and so it's again, the subtlety is there. It really, it shows how much. Exactly, and it's not hammer over the head. It's just a narrative thread or part of the connective tissue of the movie.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I think about. I think that the invasion is cut so choppily. It's so chopped up and so weird, because, like, there's a part where both Peter and Flyboy are downstairs, and then you see Peter go up the escalator, and then Flyboy just miraculously is up and it's on the second floor. And then they just keep on switching different places, and it's all over the place. And then, like, they'll be right next and getting hurt by people on motorcycles and stuff. But then, like, but the cut before that, they were upstairs. And it's just, like, it's weird. And it's so hard to follow. And I think it's and I know, like, the beginning was chaotic. I think that it wasn't chaotic. I think it was sloppy. I think it was all done sloppy. Because I was getting so confused as to, okay, as I was trying to figure out where the hell is everybody, and I don't understand why they didn't, because they knew they were coming, you know, they sent a warning and everything, and then they heard them and they saw everything that was going on. They could have just, I feel like, especially Peter knowing this stuff, he should have known a way more tactical thing to do. Setting traps, you know, Home Alone style and stuff like that. There were things that they could have done.
But I think it was time, though. They called him on the radio, like, they saw them coming. They called him on the radio. I think it was, you know, you can't Home Alone it that quick. I think that was it. It was like quick, like, in terms of them coming. It was
time to prepare.
Yeah, I think that was what that was there.
And you know what? The funny thing is, if you think about it, at the beginning of this film, when you have them flying over, like, the countryside of, like, the, I don't know, the
that's
like
where I grew up.
The rural area.
By the way, that's where I'm from.
Yeah. Are you from Pittsburgh?
You see footage.
I'm from the forest, right next to
forest. You see footage, like, of, literally, like rednecks. They're shooting, like, stray zombies, you know, and they're like trying to clear out the area. And if you think about it, those are the same kind of rednecks that, like, ended Night of the Living Dead, right? And so you fast forward months later while they're in the mall, and I feel like those guys were like the evolution of this biker gang. And so no matter what, the outside world is going to, like, no matter how safe they think they are going to be, the outside world's going to come in and invade them. And so yeah, it's interesting. Now that you mention it, it's like that. I think the biker gang and is kind of like the connective tissue between both movies, because they kind of ended Night of the Living Dead, and now they're ending Dawn of the Dead. Like the evolution of them is ending Dawn of the Dead.
So I don't know why, but I'm picturing like a Pokemon thing. It was like, oh look, little redneck evolved into biker gang member. Like,
Yeah, we have
That was
where
my
it's
uncle.
Squirtle, and then now it's Blastoise.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, so that's what
Tom Savini.
And for my Pittsburgh people, it'd be like Yin's always.
Yeah, I
Like
will
it's a
say this.
Pittsburgh thing.
I will say the stunts are great, honestly, especially for little budget and stuff like that. And Tom Savini's a hoss, but man, like, still that editing though. That editing it's tough to watch, especially that. Like, it's weird. And
Well, I think the thing is like George Romero, like he actually got to start editing movies, and he also shot commercials, and so he used to shoot a lot of footage and then assemble it all together in the edit. And so I think,
And he did edit himself.
yeah, and he does edit
That's
himself.
crazy.
So like, I think it's he kind of shot a lot of footage of the motorcycle gang, and he kind of just didn't know how to piece it together.
yeah,
And I think this is a big leap for him too. And like if you think about Romero as a filmmaker, this is by far the biggest action sequence he's ever done, and on a small budget. So I think there's a certain element like to the chaos of, okay, how do I do this? How do I cut this? And I think I feel like everything you're saying is probably intentional by Romero. And I think in part because he realized it's hard to follow anyway because of the logistics of the way they had to shoot it in the mall. So he just went with that chaos to make you feel sort of disjointed as you watch it. I think that's my guess without any real insight, but I think that's what he was trying to do. Just because, like I said,
if he did, then he should be then he should be highly regarded like Orson Welles then to like everybody, because that's brilliant.
he's, at least in terms of zombie films, man, no one, like I said, like no one did zombies like Romero did. And he has some other films that are really worth watching, like Martin from around the same time. Some later things, Creepshow, highly underrated, different kind of movie. But the zombie movies, like he said things that everyone else is trying to say or just repeating since then, really, and even the good stuff that's come then. But let's talk about the ending of this film, because this is the interesting part. So we talked about the ending of Night of the Living Dead. This ending was also originally going to be super, super insanely bleak. So originally, there's the part where Franny's up at the helicopter. Flyboy turns into a zombie, which, by the way, the best zombie walk ever, and even Romero has said so too, that zombie walk that Steven does where he seems to have no ankles as he's shuffling forward.
Yeah,
it's just amazing. So Peter takes him down. Peter's at the ladder, considering going up. The zombies are coming in. He has that little derringer or whatever it is, and he is going to shoot himself in the head. He is going to kill himself. Up on the helicopter, Franny is about to, Flyboy has since taught her how to fly, and she is, in the original ending, he shoots himself, and she puts her head into the chopper blades, which is kind of why they had that zombie at the beginning, which was teased. That was meant to be like kind of like a foreshadowing of what's going to happen for Franny, that she's going to chop her own head off. But Romero, I understand that's what he wrote, but never filmed it, thank God. That they decided, okay, he said it's 10 years later, he doesn't want a bleak ending, because when we say hopeful, it's like barely hopeful.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's, but they
there's
do
no
head off
direction
to,
or goal or like anything.
Yeah.
There's no plan. There's no nothing.
To
It's
quote
just they
Penny's
just fly.
favorite song right now, my daughter Penny's favorite song. They go into the unknown.
Oh my God!
I wish she was here, because you would hear her echoing that singing in the background if she was awake.
It's a good song.
Her favorite song ever.
I love
Well,
Frozen
she's still
too.
a Let It Go fan. She's old school for Let It Go, but she
It's funny, like the head exploding scene in the apartment building. That was originally supposed to be Galen Ross's head that she was going to use for the original ending, and they ended up using it for like one of the best head exploding scenes of all time.
Where literally that head exploding scene is like Tom Savini blasting it with a shotgun.
Yeah,
like
he legit had a shotgun just blew it away.
This is like Pittsburgh independent filmmaking at its best, right there. So it's like,
funny.
we'll just fill it with blood and shoot it with a shotgun. And that's the kind of thing where they probably had like one take. That was it. Like, got to make it work. like, can we get this on film? So
I like the ending. I love Peter's line too. Or I just love that exchange where he's just like, how much gas do we have? And she's just like, not much. And then it's just like all of that whole exchange was just kind of like, it was a sigh of relief, but then a sigh of also worry, and at the same time, and disbelief as well. It was just, like what you said. It was just, they lost. They didn't really win. They escaped, but did they?
earlier in the film, when they first get the helicopter, it's the foreshadowing for this moment where the guy that, like, I don't know if he's the helicopter guy, who he is. It doesn't really matter. I think he might be one of the other cops. He's like, "It's all done, man. It's all done." And then he says, "Maybe we can make it to the island." And then I think it's Steven that's like, "What island?" He's like, "Any island." He's like, he asked them, "Where are you headed?" And Steven's answer, straight up. It's like that. Even then, they end up at the mall, but they didn't know. They just were going. Like, and there's one point where Franny and Steven were talking about, like, well, what about our original plan to go to Canada? But they don't know what's going on in Canada. You know what I mean? That's like, they don't know. Like, they just don't know. They don't know where to go. And we haven't talked about it much, but throughout the film, you get, like, little hints of, like, they're watching the TV and the media and the news, which was very predominantly used in the original film. That's how you got a lot of the exposition in Night of the Living Dead. So in this film, they kind of do the same thing. But the cool thing is, in this film, it's the guys you see at the news station at the beginning, but it's like, it's just them. And it's like the world is completely gone around them, and they're still somehow on the air. It's like, these are the last two guys on television.
I look
really
at
feels
like
that.
eye patch scientist, and he's like, dummies, dummies,
We have to
dummies.
go nuclear. Like,
Yeah.
Orson, he reminded me so much of Orson Welles.
major cities. Like, yeah.
And speaking of that, I think there's a lot of nice touches with this movie. Like at the very beginning, when they take off in the helicopter, they pick up, and then you see a skyscraper in the background, and you just see the lights turn off. And so it's such a nice touch to show that, like, society is slowly falling apart, whether they like it or not, and they kind of just don't know what to do. They're just trying to fly by the seat of their pants. I love the ending. I think if they did the original ending, I think it would have been too bleak, and I don't think we would be talking about this movie today if it went with that original ending, because it just would have been too bleak, and I don't think anybody would have really loved it as much as we all do, and because this whole movie has like this kind of satirical, whimsical tone, and it balances out the horror and the comedy like really well in the way that Shaun of the Dead does. So if the original ending was that, it would have been too bleak.
Yeah, it's almost like that ending would take it away from being a satire and just
make
it.
I would
Exactly.
I would rather see the characters I would like to know that they actually grew, I guess, and now I don't know. It just, again, the uncertainty is so cool.
I disagree. I like the fact that when they first came there's zombies all over the mall. And, they cleaned it out, right? And they set up a home, and their home was invaded, and they're forced to leave. And then right after, like, the zombies came back. And it's like, it doesn't matter what they did, whether they closed out the mall, they put the trucks there, they made it a home, they did all these things, and all of that was just pointless. Like, because zombies will take over anyway.
Yeah, and the biker gang doesn't have the mall either. That's the thing. It's just the zombies have it.
And so I think that's a really great idea, that no matter what we do to create some kind of safety, it can be easily unraveled. And so it doesn't matter. Like, that's what the great thing is. It doesn't matter. Like, the zombies just kind of took over the mall again, and, they fly off. And I know that she says, it's Ken Foree. He says, how much gas we have left? And Fran says, not much. And, they fly off. And I love how it's ambiguous. You don't know whether they survived. You don't know whether, they died, or they went to another location and got killed, or it's like you're kind of left open. And so, and that's a thing, what I love about, like the Walking Dead comic, is it really picks up the thread of what happens after they leave. Like, what, because a lot of zombie movies kind of, because of this movie, end that way, in an ambiguous way. And so you don't really know what's going to happen to them. And it's interesting to see, like, what happens. Your brain wanders and tries to figure out, like, what's going to happen to them in the future. It could be, anything. And so I like the fact that it's ambiguous as opposed to being definitive, you know, and that's the thing. It's like all these people feel like real people. Like everything that they did, they reacted in ways that really, I feel like real people would react. So like when Flyboy's fighting that zombie in the beginning, and he's like really rough and rolling around. It's like that's how people would fight zombies. Like they wouldn't be like pulling out kung fu or being a sharpshooter.
John
You know what I
Wick.
mean?
He just turns
It would
into
be
John
like-
Wick out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. They would be
I
like,
would pull out kung fu. You better believe it.
and so like all these movies nowadays, it's like they fight with zombies and they like have it taken care of. Like they know how to shoot a gun, and they're like, all of a sudden they have military training, and it's like I love how these characters are so rough. They're very human, and so you root for them because they're kind of
Or
the underdogs.
Except for the guys that actually have military training in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And
but-
that's
I
why,
know, I'm just joking.
I think
I'm
that's
just
why
joking.
Peter, was able to take out so many of the biker gang because he actually has training. Like he is, he's
No,
trained.
and they establish in the beginning of the film when we haven't talked about it at length, but it's a raid on like Martinez and some criminal enterprise in this tenement, which also it speaks to issues of race and things that we didn't really go into, which there's a lot to be said, especially in that sequence. But that part where you see like it establishes them him going after people and attacking people and taking out that threat of other people, of opposing people.
Yeah, and the sad thing is like there's a lot of people that are innocent in that building, and there's like they become collateral damage, while they're doing that raid. And Peter and Roger have to kind of contain the other cops because they're all unraveling. And so, I mean, it really, again, the subtlety, it tells you like, hey, this society is really unraveling. Anything can happen. Holy shit, that guy's head exploded.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. And I love that tone. Anything can happen in this movie. Like, we are not safe. No matter how much we lie to ourselves and think we're safe, we're not safe. And that's I mean, that's really scary to have that message throughout the whole movie. Like, we're not safe. No matter what we do, we're powerless to stop what's, the inevitable.
Well, I don't know if this movie was depressing, but Paul sure just made me depressed. Thanks, Paul.
Oh, yeah, no. But I think that's why the horror works so well.
No,
I think
totally
that's
it
why
does.
the horror
Yeah.
works so well in this movie, and that's why I think this movie's so effective. It's like it balances the horror and the comedy so well, and that's why it's groundbreaking. And that's why we're talking about this movie like 40 years later, or 42 years later. And, I don't think anybody's going to talk about World War Z like 42 years after.
Absolutely not. I mean, they're still talking about a sequel after so many years, but they don't talk about the actual movie itself still.
I mean, Brad Pitt's
Fantastic
the
book.
elderly.
Fantastic
though.
book. Though. Definitely read the book, World War Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
Read the book,
Max
for
Brooks.
sure.
Yeah, Max
Yes,
Brooks.
Max Brooks. Awesome.
But, and that's the thing, like I was saying before, I don't like zombie movies, but I did like this movie. And I think I would give this movie an 8 out of 10.
It's not a zombie, Tyler. It's not a zombie movie. It's about flesh-eating ghouls.
That's what it was. It's my favorite flesh-eating ghoul movie. And
Yes. Why isn't the genre called that? Because Scooby-Doo ruined it for us.
So Tyler, what was the tipping point? Like, what changed your mind about this movie?
I think that like some of the montages were good, and I cared about the characters. There are certain things that I would change. Like I would still change. Like I don't want to talk about it. I don't want the episode to be too long, but like I would have changed everything with a rating where they were going after the helicopter, and everything else was just extra. Like I thought it was kind of weird that they were going after the money, but I also understand the consumerism aspect of this film.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think they're, like I said, they're just going after the mall.
Yeah,
not so much, and the money's there, and they are just too stupid to realize, well, what is this?
Yeah,
they're going after the mall.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe what we would have seen, more of, and so maybe I think maybe what I was expecting was something a little bit more tropey, and maybe it's good, and that it is good that I didn't go that route, but I'm just also not accustomed to it, where it's good to see a movie that doesn't do that. So I think it's because of I like the characters, and I like I think it's executed well, especially for an indie film, way back when, the beginning of essentially horror and film. So it's. I think that's why I like it, and it resonates more with me. Now, other
Was
ones.
this your first time watching it?
Yeah,
or...
this is the first time you watching this
Oh,
film.
it is.
I had
Oh, wow.
seen Night of the Living Dead when I was younger, and then I haven't seen it since then. I just know I didn't like it, but maybe I might change my mind now. But yeah,
Okay.
I think I've
We'll
just
talk about that next October.
Yeah, I definitely think you should take a rewatch on Night of the Living Dead, and then when you get the chance, watch Day of the Dead, because Day of the Dead is really, really it's way bleak. It's like bleak in the same way that the original ending is, but I mean, it has some merits. It introduces a lot of really great ideas.
So, Paul, any final thoughts on Dawn of the Dead?
I just, you know what I love about this movie is that George Romero. I noticed I didn't never noticed this before, but in the credits, his writing and directing credit, his directing credit is like sandwiched in with other production credits. It doesn't have his own title card, and I think that kind of speaks a lot to how he's kind of a salt of the earth, like just a regular guy. You know, he doesn't have like this sense of ego or anything. He's not a flashy guy. He just wanted to make a movie, and I especially love how this movie is shot. It's like, very shot like a commercial. It's very, regular movements, nothing fancy, no crane shots, just establishing shots, and like sometimes you zoom in on zombies or something like that. But it's a very I guess like blue collar way of shooting the whole
Very
movie.
Pittsburgh way of shooting it.
Yeah, very very Pittsburgh.
But
and,
it's like that idea. Pittsburgh as a city is like it's the working class, the steel city. It's like that kind of thing, and that's why Romero as a filmmaker really reflects that. For someone who is from there, and Tyler's going to make fun of me in a second, I'm sure.
Well,
I'm just kidding. But someone who's from there.
All I'm saying is that it has an authenticity to it because of the way it's shot, that it really adds more realism to the events of the movie. I think that, you know what I mean? It's like the way, because it's shot like a commercial, it's like you're there.
Like
you're
you could literally
with the events that's going on, and so it really, elevates the movie.
Like I think I've shared this before with you, Paul, that you could like take the zombies out, and it's almost like a commercial for the mall, the way it's shot.
Yeah.
Especially the sequences like at the very end, and when they first get to the mall, like at the very end, once it's taken over, it's got that like music, it's like and then just like shots, zombies on the ice rink, zombies over here, zombies on the escalator, zombies in the fountain. Like it's just showing you the mall.
Did y'all notice that the music from the Monty Python and the Holy Grail at the beginning with like the title card where they're talking about the moose and everything like that? That's in the movie.
What?
Yeah.
That's in this movie?
Yeah. Not in Dawn of the Dead, the beginning song where it's going through all like the title, or it was like all people who mentioned the mooses have been sacked and stuff like that. Dun 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 dun. Like where it's like those little wooden things. Dun 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 dun. It's in the movie. It's crazy.
Maybe it's the 70s style.
No, it is the exact same song. I went and looked at it into it, and
Hey.
it was, and I was like, what the heck?
I'll blow your mind further. Like in Shaun of the Dead, the titles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually music used from Dawn of the Dead. Like a lot of, it has.
I can't wait to go back and watch the Cornetto trilogy.
Gorillaz actually used the, the scene where it has a helicopter zombie and he sees the rest of them. That dun 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 dun. Like, so a lot of that goblin music is used by so many different people because like they just love this movie. It's like so, just. Like it just permeated pop culture in so many different ways, and so.
Well, the Romero version isn't the Goblin music; it's the Muzak version. So it's like the more like that mall generic. Like there's different music too in the different cuts. So it's to make it even more complicated and confusing for audiences.
Also, the Monty Python song is apparently called "Ice Flow Number 9," and it was used for Dawn of the Dead. That's crazy. It was taken from the Wolf Music Library.
Yeah, I know that basically what Romero did was just use a lot of sort of stock music and music like that because it's kind of goes with what Romero was trying to do. What Paul was saying with how it was shot. That it was just like these things that kind of almost in a sense were like familiar, but used in a way that made it kind of feel unsettling. Like, you know what a mall looks like. You know, but now here's a zombie shuffling through it. You know, like the sound, but with it, yeah. So that's the vibe I was going for. But so it's cool to learn that, where these connecting threads that I didn't know connected.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts?
I like the movie. I would never take tennis lessons from Peter.
But shooting lessons, highly recommended.
Absolutely. But shooting lessons, absolutely.
I mean, I pretty much said everything I'm gonna say about the movie. I mean, I fucking love this movie. It's kind of like The Shining. Like, every time I watch it, there's something new I'll take from it, and this time was no exception. And if you ever have the chance, I highly recommend watching some of the documentaries of this movie, like how the way it's shot. There's this particularly one documentary, and it's Greg Nicotero, who did the special effects in Walking Dead, and he actually
also from Pittsburgh.
I'm sorry?
Greg Nicotero from Pittsburgh.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay.
This is how he got his start. Yeah, through Romero.
Oh. So he shot this, like, Ken Foree was doing a mall tour for Maroonville Mall, and he was like showing all the different locations of Dawn of the Dead. So I highly recommend watching that. And I just, I kind of wish movies were made in the same way this movie was made, where it has this like rebellious spirit, and it just like exploded because of its authenticity and its like sincerity,
Kind of like Mad Max.
Yeah. So if anything, I just hope that movies like, 40 years from now, there's a movie that came out that affects people the way Dawn of the Dead has affected us.
Yeah. I think they have. It's called From Justin to Kelly. And it was a Justin I don't even know their names anymore.
American Idol.
Yeah,
Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly Clarkson driven video.
Kelly Clarkson was one of my first celebrity sightings in LA when I first came out here, and right around the time that movie probably came out, but a little bit later, at Barney's Beanery. If you know where that is, any LA people, it's like a bar. It's like it's like at Santa Monica and Wilshire-esque. Not exactly there. I'm forgetting exactly where it's at, but in that part of town. So sort of between Hollywood and the West Side for LA people. So, but the reason...
Also, one thing, when I was watching the movie, I thought of, like, every time they did a take, George Romero would stop and go, "That's how we do it in Pittsburgh." Like, it just cracked me up.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something about, like this movie would be better with Kelly Clarkson in it, which I would agree, too. I'm just kidding.
I just think of him, like, with those big Harry Carey glasses, being like, "That's how we do it in Pittsburgh."
He didn't have the glasses yet, though.
Yeah, I know.
Young Romero, pre those glasses.
Pre-glasses.
I think we should do video. I think it would be more effective if we did video. So.
Anyway.
Teasing.
So the reason I picked this film specifically, this was my choice for the month of Halloween. It's a very special movie to me. Like I said, growing up as a kid, zombie movies were the only scary movies that I was okay watching because they were... As a Pittsburgher, they were ours. Like, I met Tom Savini when we screened Day of the Dead with my film festival. One of the things he said there was that he thinks every kid from Pittsburgh wants to grow up to be a zombie. And at least everybody in that crowd, all of us geeky kids that, didn't make the football team, or I didn't try to make the football team. And I like football. I like the Steelers. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. But he was right about everybody in that audience of that screening. We wanted to be zombies. We would do anything to be a zombie in a Romero movie. Like, that would be like a dream come true for any Pittsburgh kid. So that's why I selected this movie. It's personal because it's impacted me from a story point of view and things like that, but it's also from where I'm from. So that makes the connection even deeper. And it's one of those things where it's a point of pride. I have nothing to do with it whatsoever. I am, but I used to shop at that mall. So I knew those places. Those fountains.
You're lucky. I'm from Austin. All we have is that John Travolta Michael movie.
The fountains in the mall when I was a kid, like if you go to that mall now, those fountains are gone. But those fountains were still there when I was a kid. I used to throw coins in them, and I used to think about like a zombie flopping into that water. That guy, the big guy in the bathing suit, when he sort of slides into the water. I always think about that. As a kid, I'd think about that when I'd like throw a coin in there. So that is why I chose this film, because I love the film, and it's also that weird point of civic pride, I guess, being from Pittsburgh. And
wait, are you from Pittsburgh?
You have to ask my mom.
But yeah.
So, but also one other thing. So since we're talking about Dawn of the Dead, on my YouTube channel, actually, I already plugged T-shirts 7 hours ago at the start of this episode. But be sure to check out. I did a couple of videos about the making of and sort of the history of Night of the Living Dead, The Mall, and Dawn of the Dead that just kind of throw in a little bit of my perspective on it. So go check those out on Josiah is Right, WRITE, and do the whole subscribe for T-shirts thing.
Absolutely. Paul, where can they find you?
Oh, Arcade Blackfire, Black Nut Block. So just point that out. So yeah.
All
and
right.
here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for listening in. Definitely take advantage and get a free shirt from us. It's gonna be fun. And happy Halloween. This is a good episode to start off with this month. We have some exciting stuff coming out the remainder of the month, and we can't wait for you to listen in. Have a wonderful week. Follow us on all the social media and all the stuff. Go to our website for articles, videos, and all of the rest of our podcast. We have 8 different shows. And please wear a mask.
Because it's Halloween.
Yeah, right? Yeah, because it's Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. And GGG.
So what's on the silver screen? I got some drinks, so would it be? Grand Geek Gathering.